Alrighty, hello there YouTube. So we are back in the studio. Today I have a 12 by 12 inch, I guess approximately 12 by 12 inch cut MDF panel that has a couple coats, I think 3 coats of Liquitex professional acrylic gesso. We're starting out with the acrylics. If you want to have the same type of information that I'll be using in this video, feel free to check the description box down below. The agenda is to start with acrylic because it's much faster drying and then evolve it into an oil painting. I'm going to be doing this all in one sitting, all in one day, so don't expect anything too realistic, okay? Nothing too realistic, just fun painting times with all of us. Cool? Alright, so I'm going to be using a little bit of water, Ivory Black, burnt umber. This is acrylic paint. This little thingy right here, I'm definitely going to have a link to that on the description box down below. If you are interested in using acrylics or doing the same type of technique that I'm going to be doing, definitely get yourself one of these. For acrylic, if you're doing acrylic and you don't have one of these, you need one of these. This is a stay wet palette. It is the type of palette that has the sponge underneath and it keeps the paints fresh. In fact, these acrylic paints are the same ones that I used last week. That's right, 7 days ago. 7 days ago. And the paints are still usable. The secret, I just put it in the refrigerator. In the refrigerator right by the orange juice. And it stays fresh and ready to use. That's what I enjoy about this. And for the technique, I know I'm talking a lot. With these painting and talking videos, I will do edits. I will do cuts because I'm sure you don't want to hear me talking for the entire duration of the video. So there will be some cuts now and then in the filming just because that's how we're going to do it. The idea with the process is exactly the same as last time. Last time I did an acrylic painting, just completely acrylic. I didn't switch into oils. I will switch into oils, but I'm going to do this chiaroscuro style. So I'm going to start off with the dark, then I'm going to lightly map out the light shapes very loosely, and then I'll get into painting in the lights. What I'm going to use right now to expedite the drying process is just a blow dryer. I won't show that step just because I guess it would be kind of redundant. So let me go ahead and speed up the drying time for this. Alrighty, so the surface is now completely dry. Again, I just used the blow dryer to help to expedite the drying process. I moved this away from the panel just so I wouldn't dry the acrylic paints. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going with a little thingy here of pastel. I would recommend using a larger one. This is just what I had on hand. I'm currently doing a still life painting that involves my pastels, and I didn't feel like moving my still life, and this was just what was the easiest thing to move and not disrupt my still life. So I just want a very simple shape, and this video is not really about drawing particularly, so right now I'm just going to go ahead and show you how I place the head. And yeah, let's do a little cut now. And we're back. So again, simple shapes. I don't want any details or anything. I just want the basic placement of the head. Now what I'm going to do is get another brush. And we're going to go and start to fill in the lights. So right now I'm just going to be looking for basic shape. Using just titanium white. And I'm drawing out the forehead. So those of you that are not as comfortable with acrylics, the basic mindset for me is that I'm just creating a surface that I can more easily paint on. each area that I'm applying paint to is an area that I'm going to let dry. I'm thinking as soon as I put this mark down, the thing is going to dry. That's the advantage of acrylic paint. Now, as to whether or not working oil over acrylic is that archival, we don't really know with 100% certainty. Go ahead, correct me if I'm wrong. It is accepted among most of us, and I guess some art conservationists, but again, I'm not an art conservationist, but I hear that it is okay to put oiled paint over acrylic. In fact, most of the gessoed canvases that people put oil painting over top of are acrylic primed. So we should be fine. So right now, again, I'm just drawing very abstract. I'm just looking for, let's just cover this whole thing. I'm just looking for light and dark, and I'm just trying to get a kind of a perimeter for which I'll be building. It's going to look quite hideous in the beginning, but that's okay, as long as we have something that we can work over. Now, as I feel that I'm starting to ramble a little bit, we're going to do a cut. Oh, and by the way, the photo reference of Sophia, I will post this to the Facebook photo reference group. And if I forget to post it, someone just email me, just remind me to post it. So I apologize. The one I used last week I didn't post, so I will be posting that. So now that I have this and it's dry, I want to be careful with the pastel. So if you're going to be following the same type of technique, just know that you don't want to go too heavy with the pastel. So I intentionally drew a lot less with the pastel. So now what I'm going to do is just continue to build. So I'm looking at these large masses, and just like I always do, I'm just looking for big shapes. And with the acrylic, I'm using the Salvador acrylics again. Thanks again, Salvador. Right now, I'm taking advantage of the fact that the acrylic is very transparent. Watch this. So the titanium white here is actually very transparent, so I can go over that and still see the layer underneath. And I'm just building the thicker layer of acrylic where I want there to be a thicker surface. And what I like about acrylic, starting with acrylic like this, is that it's actually not as stressful as I used to think that it would be. In the past, I would be so, I guess, worried about it drying right away and then drying in awkward, drying awkward, until I realized the fact that it dries so fast allows you to be a little bit indecisive because you can just go over it. It starts to get difficult in the rendering stages, or like when you're starting to put in more delicate halftones. That's when I'm going to switch to the oil, and I'll be covering the entirety of the picture with the oil paint. I don't know. I may leave some areas to be acrylic. We'll see. This dark, by the way, is burnt umber and ivory black. And now I'm gonna make a little indication here of the article of clothing that the model's wearing, though I don't think I want to get too far into that. So I'll just leave that be. The background is important to draw with, in particular with acrylic. So let's go ahead and just mix any old gray for now. Something to just draw. So I'm just drawing the back side of the hair. All that I care is that it's a value that is different than the hair, so that I can get a sense of the mass. a sense of the mass of the hair and not focus on minutia or any kind of unnecessary details. And now I can start to introduce something in for the shadow. So just some kind of burnt umber, ivory black type mixture. When you start with acrylic, one of the disadvantages of starting this way with acrylic is the edges are going to be very sharp by nature. You know, you can do something like that, what I did just there. Just mix really quickly, but you're gonna have a sharper edge in general, and that's just something you can correct with the with more layers, more halftones like I did last week, and just continue to build it as a standalone acrylic painting. Or as you'll see with this video, I will get into the oil paint when it comes time for the more subtle transitions. But we're a long way from there. And I can be fairly confident that this is nearly dry, but just to be sure, I'm going to stay away from this light for now, and I'm just going to use this darker color to draw a little bit more. Gonna get some kind of dark gray for the background over here. Maybe that's too dark. About something like that. And I'll use it to draw the contour of the hair. And if you notice, my hand constantly goes to the right because I very rapidly clean the brush with the water. And again, I will continue to repeat the question that I'm sure that I'll get, why I'm using acrylic so much. I just like to experiment, and it's just faster for this stage, significantly faster. Especially if you're going to do like a one-sitting painting, like an alla prima. If you would like to have a more structured, step-by-step guidance type of experience, feel free to check out my online classes. Links to that will be in the description box down below. I'm very excited with my students' work. And with my online classes, I guide my students through projects. So it's a results-based class. Right now we're still on project 1. We're going to finish project 1 soon. Then we're going to move into project 2. And I constantly reiterate that the classes are set up so that you can enter at any time, start with lesson 1 if you would like. Even when I'm in lesson 100 and I upload a new lesson every Monday, even if I'm on lesson 100 or on lesson 400, you can still go ahead and send me images of lesson 1. And that's the way the class format works out. That's the way it's working right now. My students send me images by Saturday. They have the option to, of course they don't have to if they don't want to, send me images by Saturday night. And then I create a teacher-student feedback video, and I give them feedback. So it's a virtual classroom. I give them feedback. It's a very exciting format. I'm very excited to see my students continue to progress. And remember, these are more of painting demonstrations. Sometimes, you know, when I do the voiceover style with these, it's usually because it's a longer process. Then I'll use the voiceover style. Those of you that are on Patreon, another thing that I have is the behind the scenes. I also give them behind the scenes videos, so they get a lesson uploaded on Mondays. On Saturdays they get a behind the scenes episode, and also on Mondays they get a feedback video for their artwork. But yeah, if you're watching from Patreon, hopefully I remember to say this, but the painting that you saw me working on last week and this week, I still didn't finish. So I was working on a painting that I was going to do voiceover style for the YouTube channel for us right here. But I could not finish it. I couldn't get things to work out the way I wanted to. So now I'm just doing this, you know, for fun. Now, I can be pretty confident that this is dry, and it is dry, see? Gotta love acrylic for that. So now I'm just gonna start to go in with some halftones. And I'm gonna use these halftones to draw. So this is gonna be a color underpainting. I'm still working with mass, and for pretty much the entirety of the demonstration I'll be working that way. And I'm just using the Zorn palette for flesh tones primarily, which is it's just a vermilion red. Of course it's not the genuine vermilion red, but some type of vermilion red type color, and yellow ochre, titanium white. Sometimes I'll use the burnt umber, which is not part of the Zorn palette, but I'll use it sometimes if I feel like it. And then I have the Ivory Black, which for the Salvador colors, it's actually oxide black. And now you can tell I'm really just going for volumes. Not at all concerned about any details. And remember, I always say this, if you keep your shapes simple and easy, when the time comes to make changes, those changes will be simple and easy to manage. Ran out of titanium white, so let me just go ahead and just do a cut and fill in the rest of this. And we're back, and you're wondering what a mess, but you know, that's really a beneficial thing to have in the beginning, to have it to be workable and covering as much as you can. And I will address what I missed last week with these type of tubes, the Salvador tubes. So I used a little thing to poke into this metal cap. But yeah, there's a thingy here. I'm just not that observant, so let's try it. And it worked. I was able to open it, and yeah, no problem there. Silly me. This is permanent red violet. And hopefully in the photo reference, hopefully I cropped it properly, you can see that there's a red element here. And I decided might as well. So let's just throw in this red violet, see what happens. And if you keep a painting like this, especially a study, so this what I would consider this more of a study. It's really fun, and in the sense that you don't have to be so committed, and you can move things so quickly and easily with the acrylic. It's a weird thing to think about, because if you would have asked me, you know, do I think that acrylic is painterly or friendly to work with, like maybe even 2 months ago, I probably would have said, no way, man, acrylic, it dries right away. I don't know how you can work with that. How do you work with something that dries right away? And the reality is you turn that quick drying nature into something that you can turn into something painterly. It's kind of hard to say. The fact that it dries so fast means that, oh, well, I don't like that this shape the nose is here. One brush stroke and it's gone. Just like when you're painting wet on wet, you're able to move things because the paint stays open with oil paint. Excuse me. It stays open with oil paint, so you have that ability to move colors wet on wet. But with acrylic, you can really move them quite easily with wet on dry. It's just a different type of feel to it. That's all. Let's move this so I can see the corner. And this will just provide a nice little background color to relate the rest of the colors. And again, I don't know if I'm going to keep that or not. That's the beauty with acrylic. If I don't like it, just go right over it. You want to keep moving with acrylic. And I'm just considering what this element in the background does for the design, the aesthetic of this painting. Yes, it's a study, but you know, even a simple study can be quite fun to look at. And if I'm going to put something over here with this picture, I should probably put something over here. So yeah, just bear with me. This is just fun. It's just for fun. Let's just throw something back there. I don't know. It just has to maybe lead you towards the central focal point. Doesn't have to be anything too literal at this point. I think that adds to the background. I guess it kind of looks like your usual art studio where you have the model stand and they're sitting there and there's the drapery in the background and maybe studio stuff. Maybe some casts would have been sitting there or something, but I don't know. It just adds some kind of, I don't know, some kind of narrative, if you will, to the background. And now what I'm doing is just putting in some more little subtle halftones here and there. Not that subtle though. I'm just gonna play it by ear when it comes to when to switch to oil paint. So I'll paint for a little bit more and then I'll go into a cut. The only thing I don't really like about the acrylic process, I guess it's just what I've been using, but my paper towel, I end up having to use up so much paper towel, and you know, gotta protect the earth and stuff, so don't like using too much paper towel. And these are just guesstimations for the light of the eye. Remember, the white of the eye is not white, it's usually some type of halftone. Actually, this video is being uploaded 4th of July. Yeah, I keep hearing the fireworks. It kind of freaks me out. I think that it's like gunshots or something. Now clearly that nose is going to move, and that's okay. At any point, if I get frustrated with the fast drying of the acrylic, then I'll just transition into the oil paint. But you want to work with freedom. You don't want to be too concerned about, you know, painting a pretty picture or trying to please people that are seeing your paintings. You want to paint for yourself. Keep running out of titanium white. And I'm not really that concerned about the color right now. And what I'm doing is I'm just anchoring something, that eye. I'm just anchoring it, and if anything has to move relative to it, then just move it. And the goal is, at this point, when I get to a stage in the acrylic painting where I can't get enough value transitions, or if I just get to a point, or when I get to a point with the acrylic painting that, you know, I feel like I've said all that I could possibly say with the acrylic, that's when I'll jump into the oil paint. And I'll be reworking all of those areas. Much more quickly though, because I'll already have something over, or something to work on top of. Alright, so now that you're seeing how these shapes are starting to take form. Guess we'll jump into another cut. I guess right about, give me a second. Alrighty, a little more time has passed, but I thought I should at least film some segments of what's going on in the painting at this stage. Still using acrylics. I'm moving very quickly, very rapidly through the painting, and I'm working with freedom in the sense that I know that I'm going over this with oil paint, so you know, whatever mistakes I make is fine. It's just I can build on the underlying structure that we have that we're constructing here. I will say that the difficulty with acrylic versus oil is the value. You have to really have a good sense of value, and you see how I just move very rapidly from one mixture to the next. This is how I attain a little bit more subtlety. Whoops, in the colors. I'm kind of moving from one place to another. Not trying to have tunnel vision on any one spot just yet. And if you want to see a more in-depth video on how to create a portrait painting entirely with acrylics, feel free to check out last week's episode that I uploaded on an acrylic painting, acrylic portrait painting tutorial. There was also a review on these paints that the company graciously sent me for a review, and I really enjoy them. Salvador acrylic paints. So I'm not really going to be talking as much right now, just because there's not really much to say. You know, I'm just doing the same thing, going into smaller shapes, being as direct as I can possibly be with my values. And you may be wondering, well, just jump in the oil paint, so you're going to be doing this more subtle stuff, and I'm really just trying to say as much as I can say with the acrylic. I'm very intuitive with this at this point. You know, a lot of painters will put a lot of emphasis on the start, and you know, I think it's important to have a really solid foundation, but I think that all methods meet at some point. All methods meet in the middle at some point, and that's the middle stages. So in the beginning, I'm just kind of moving along as quickly as I can till I get to the middle stages. It is worth noting, though, that for longer, more developed paintings, I do prefer having a more, I guess, a more rigid approach. Like, you know, I prefer having something set in stone. And again, it's the same kind of process that I guide my students, my online students. I give them a set process. I think that the fundamentals are universal. So, you know, once you master a particular process, you also gain a really good insight into the fundamentals, and the fundamentals is what makes it work. Whether it's oil or acrylic or whatever. Alrighty, so now I think you have an idea, pretty good idea of how I'm moving about the painting at this stage. So now I'm going to do a little cut. Of course I'm going to fix that, but yeah, I'm going to do a little cut now and we'll return in the blink of an eye. Alrighty, so I think I've said all I want to say at this point with the acrylic. Some things are a little bit wonky drawing wise, like the jaw, and then the this eye might have to move, so now that's okay. The idea is now that I have a foundation to work on, I have shape, value, color, everything. It's basically like being able to work on a painting twice in one day, in the sense that this is now dry. I can almost think of it as a dry oil painting. Obviously the surface is acrylic, so the application of the oil paint is going to feel a little bit different than working, shall I say, it's going to be more slick than working onto a dry oil painting, but it's still going to help speed up the process a little bit. Alrighty, so we have our oil paints out and our palette. This is an old palette that I have not used in a while. Hopefully that it's sealed decently. This is just dry oil paint from who knows however many years ago, so don't get confused with this. Most of the footage will be centered towards here because the main focus is developing this, right? And I already have plenty of videos on this color palette. This is the Zorn color palette. It's my favorite color palette at this point for flesh tones. We've got titanium white, yellow ochre, cadmium red, ivory black. Ideally this would be vermilion and this would be lead white. you know, we'll get there. We'll get there. For the medium, in a little cup down here, I'll be reaching towards the bottom on this little cup. I have a fairly fat medium, so you work with oil paint, you want to work fat over lean. I don't think I'm gonna do multiple layers on this oil painting, though I might, so I'm giving myself the option. I'm using a mixture of Rublev spike oil mixed with a tiny bit of linseed oil. So linseed oil and spike oil. The spike oil is to clean, it's a thinner basically, and the linseed is the oil. Typically you just don't want to use too much linseed in the beginning. That's why I'm mixing it with the spike oil. As you continue to have more and more layers, then you want to introduce more and more oil, whether it be linseed oil or walnut oil. Those are the two main oils used to my knowledge in oil paint. You just want to have less medium in the beginning and more medium later to ensure that the first layers dry faster. But again, I don't know why I'm explaining that, because this is going to be one layer. So I'm mixing up a nice little orangey color, orangey flesh tone color, and these are Winsor Newton colors, and yes, I'm working in the traditional oil paints, not the water mixable. So once I have a flesh tone that I like, I'll just create a little gradation of it. A little more medium. The spike lavender, from what I've read, actually goes way back. All the way back before even turpentine was invented, from what I hear. So I'm just experimenting with a different solvent. If you're curious about the health aspects of it, it is a little bit safer. It's a little more costly, but it's safer than the usual mineral spirits. So now that I have that, just kind of testing the grounds there with the flesh tone, I'm now going to just start to jump into the painting. So I've given myself the luxury of stating all of the middle stages and everything is dry. So I'm just going to go ahead and just jump into form. So I'm going to start off with a darker area, and we're going to be working the forms in kind of a window shade method without I still want to maintain a sense of the big picture, the big volumes, but now that we have all of these things stated, all of the big shapes stated, now we really have the luxury, we've earned the right to go into the smaller shapes, into the small world. So starting off with this dark, and I know it must be kind of difficult to see from being all the way back there, so I'm about to move the camera. The reason I had the camera out a little bit was so you can see the color palette. And the glass that you're used to, sorry, it kind of broke. I mean, that's what happens with glass, right? It breaks. Yeah, the glass, what happened was it saw my reflection and it decided to break. I'm just kidding, of course. I just walked into the door frame and it broke. Kind of a sad moment. That glass palette has seen so many YouTube videos, so many paint-alongs. But it finally met its day. Every glass palette has its day. I'm gonna just pre-mix something for the sclera, just because it's such a common color. The black and white. Gives us some type of middle gray. And then a little bit of flesh tone. I'll just take the yellow ochre. The cadmium red. And I'll just keep this little mixture off to the side. Add titanium white to it. I want to get the Rublev Zorn palette. I really like the Rublev brand. I just have to learn how to retube oil paints because they don't put additives. That's their what I hear. It's their philosophy. They try to keep it, you know, they keep it old school. They keep it like how the old masters would have had their paints. And I'm really interested in that stuff. I should explain that comment. So the additives that are in these oil paints, the store-bought, the traditional store-bought oil paints, from what I hear, definitely check out their website, the Rublev oil paints, Rublev oil colors from Natural Pigments. The thing about not putting the additives in, it keeps the paint more pure from what I've read. But as a downside, the paint can dry in the tube. But I made this mistake in the past with lead white. I let the paint dry in the tube. I didn't let it, but it dried in the tube. And then I just was kind of frustrated with it, not knowing that I could have retubed it. In fact, I think that tube of paint is still somewhere in the studio. So I just have to learn how to do that. And I encourage you to explore your materials as much as possible. Don't just limit yourself. Explore until you find something that just works so perfectly for you. But I mean, I've already found many combos like this. I really enjoy this combo and it works well. But it's just my nature. I enjoy exploring. Now, even though I'm staying in one spot, I don't want to actually spend more than 10 minutes in one area. Meaning one form. Like, I don't want to spend more than 10 minutes on the eyelid. But I want to describe the form with much more clarity than I did in the acrylic painting. Alright, let's get you the close-up that I'm sure you want. The thing I liked about vermilion, when I was using vermilion in the Cobra, the water mixable video, the thing I like about the color vermilion versus cadmium red is that vermilion, from what I noticed, leans orange. It leans towards the orange. So it makes it a little easier to do flesh tones than the cadmium red that I'm using. At least the cadmium red from Winsor Newton, I think, leans a little more in the pink. And again, I go into much more detail about this stuff, the procedures and whatnot in my online classes. Just because I have the time to do that, I split up the videos for the students. And I enjoy seeing their work progress in the virtual classroom that we started. It's a lot of fun, and it's not that expensive. It's not expensive at all. If you're looking for some art training at $10 a month, that's all it is, $10 a month, the mentor tier on my Patreon. So every form here is gradating. Everything here is round to some extent, right? So I'm following a very procedural approach to putting in these tones. I'm starting from the mid-tones and then working out. I like to work, at least in this approach right now, I like to work in the middle values and then build it like that. And yeah, it's a pretty involved process, transitioning from the acrylic to the oil. But what I like about it is that it gives me a second chance to start to develop the painting. You can do that with, again, you can do that with oil paint. You could have just started it with oil paint and had the same kind of effect. But this has to be uploaded tomorrow, so I have to paint fast. And again, I had another video in mind. I already had footage for another video, but I just could not figure out certain elements of the painting. I just couldn't figure them out for the life of me. So I mean, if you're struggling with your oil paintings, we all struggle with things in our paintings. Whew, so I got a little bit of pink in the sclera. Oh no. But that's okay. Ivory Black and Titanium White will cool it down. You can hear the fire trucks in the background bringing down the pinkness from the sclera. One thing you'll notice with the setup of the medium, I actually don't have the straight spike oil or mineral spirits on its own. That's because I'm kind of trying to cut back on how much thinner I use. I'm trying to paint with much more a rich application of paint these days. Speaking of that, it also means I have to switch brushes periodically. And I highly recommend the Zorn palette. The 4-color palette for flesh tones. You just can't go wrong with the Zorn palette. Alright, I think you've seen enough of the development of one spot. So now we're going to do a little edit, and I'm going to spend the time I need to spend on the rest of the forms now. Alrighty, so now I think it's about an hour and a half later. So I've been putting in some more shapes. Interestingly enough, I feel like the spike lavender is like settling in much faster than the if I were using odorless mineral spirits. This isn't the first time I've painted oil over acrylic. It might be the first time I've done oil over acrylic with color, and a colorful acrylic underpainting. So yeah, I'm not sure. And there you have it. Fast and crazy brushstrokes everywhere, alla prima style portrait painting. We got to work with acrylic first. So technically it's not alla prima, even though it was done all in one sitting. The acrylic underlayer of color definitely helped. So you can see the difference now, the contrast between what it looked like before when it was only the acrylic layer. Now I could have taken the acrylic layer to a similar finish, but at a certain point it would have taken me much more work to create those transitions that you're seeing here and there. Now I wouldn't consider this to be a completely finished painting by any means. Remember, these are demonstrations, and you're not going to get a finished painting. At least I'm not going to get a finished painting out of one sitting. That usually doesn't happen. The spike lavender did seem to kind of sink into the acrylic underlayer, so I wonder what's up with that. I think that the spike oil really is a little bit stronger than I thought it would be. So if you're going to try this out, definitely stick with the odorless mineral spirits, stick with the Gamsol, or if you're going to use water mixable, you can use that too. That being said, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this video to be insightful and to help you in your portrait painting or painting experience in general. If you'd like to take classes with me, please go ahead and check out the description box down below, or just go to Yupari, Yupari artist patreon.com/Yupari artist. My online classes are $10 a month, and then my Patreon, I also have other benefits that I offer as well. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode. And it is now time for our new patron shout out. So thank you so much, Peter Darwin. Thank you so much, Elba Lopez. Thank you so much, Inbal Taco. Thank you so much, Gary McRae. Thank you so much, Kim Julie Payne. I sincerely apologize for mispronouncing anyone's name. I'm not the best when it comes to the pronunciation. Apologize for that. Remember that this week is the first weekend of the month, and the first Saturday and Sunday of the month are the live streams for the Patreon. Remember to check out the other benefits that I mentioned on the of the online class. That being said, thank you so much for your support. It means the world to me. I wish you the best in all of your artwork, and I'll see you again in the very near future.